I absolutely love gardening in raised beds. We have them all over our yard. And over the last couple of months, several of you have asked about our raised beds. So today I'm going to show you what we have used and why we've used it. We have a very simple DIY bed. We also have some raised beds from Birdies Beds. So today we're going to go out into the garden and I'm going to give you a little bit of a tour. I'm going to show you what beds we've used in which places and why. Plus, I have some assembly tips for you for Birdies Beds. I've put together 18 of them and I've figured out some tricks that you should know in case you're going to be putting together some Birdies Beds for your garden too. Okay, let's get started. So one of the questions I'm asked frequently is, why do we use so many raised beds in our yard? And there are actually a couple of reasons for this. One, and the primary reason, is that it gives me control over the soil conditions that my plants grow in. And for those of us who have inherited problematic soil, perhaps from previous homeowners, or maybe you live in an area where you have really limey soil, or like I do, really heavy clay soil, and it makes it hard to grow certain kinds of plants. Well, raised beds can be a way of basically using a no-dig method, especially if they're relatively shallow, but confining it. We have this kind of funky situation here in the back, for example. My greenhouse is located where it is because the back third of our yard, if you dig down about an inch, you end up with about a foot of playground sand. At some point in the 70s, someone dumped down a ton of sand and they had a swing set and some other things back here. And then they just put a little bit of topsoil over top of that sand. Well, the problem is that sand drains really, really well and nothing will grow back here because it's too hot and dry. It's like having a desert in a third of our backyard. So the location of the greenhouse, the location of some of our other features in our backyard are partly to compensate for that. And then to be able to have plants back here, we have put down raised beds full of good compost and other material that plants can actually grow in. And that has helped address some serious deficiencies in places in our yard where normally, honestly, we can't even get weeds to grow there. So it has really helped a lot. So if you have problematic areas in your yard, raised beds might be the solution. Our potager garden is raised beds because there is no soil there. There is about a foot of gravel, and in order to have that all removed, it was honestly cost prohibitive. We just couldn't afford that, and we couldn't afford to have good compost and soil brought in to fill that area again. So the easiest, cheapest way to do that was to just put raised beds on top of the gravel and go from there. So that is a whole reason it kind of solved that problem. And it's been a great solution, and I'm really excited about how that turned out. But raised beds have solved a whole bunch of different problems in our yard as a result. Over in the orchard, we have land that slopes and all the water runs away from where I wanted to plant the orchard. So we used raised beds there full of really rich compost so that those trees would have something that will hold on to the soil, and it helps to address the slope and even make things level, which is really helpful too. So these are our DIY raised beds, and we have these all over the yard at this point. They're super easy to build. They're made out of standard lumber. They are pressure treated, so I don't grow vegetables in these beds, but they have been fantastic all over the yard. In the corners, we have 4x4s, and then they're made out of standard lengths of 2x lumber. These are 2x12s, we have 2x8s, we have all kinds of different configurations depending on how deep we want them to be. They are made out of pressure treated, but we largely put perennials in these beds. And the thing is, they're easy and inexpensive to build. We screw them together. You could even have the lumber cut at the lumber yard, wherever you buy your lumber, and then bring it home and just put them together. All you would need is a good drill and the right fasteners. They're open to the ground, and we just have a layer of cardboard at the bottom, and then it's filled with a raised bed mix of compost, wood chips, some kind of a raised bed mix. It varies from bed to bed depending on what we've been able to acquire at the time. But these are fantastic, and like I said, we have them all over the yard. I think we have somewhere in the range of 30 of them built around the yard at this point. One of the reasons I love these beds too is that we can just decide, okay, we're going to put a bed here. They all have the same detail, but we've done them over time and have been able to put the yard together a little bit at a time. You break down a big project into smaller pieces, and that's what we've done here. And these raised beds have been a big part of that process. So this bed is built on the back side of it out of logs. And this year I need to top these up. All this irregularity gives hiding places for native bees and other little creatures. We've had mice living in here, all kinds of things. It's a little weedy back here right now, but I really like how this has worked out in the end. And these logs just will rot down over time, and this year I probably need to add another layer or two, kind of build them up again, but it's a great little bit of habitat back here, and nobody really sees it because it's the back side of this raised bed that's full of native perennials. And this is by our pond too. So this part of the yard I don't show very often. And that's because it has been a work in progress for a long time. But this year it is getting a makeover. I used to have several raised beds over here. This is the perfect place to grow tomatoes. But they looked like a mess, honestly, and they weren't big enough. So I have replaced them this year with one giant Birdies bed, and it is one of their tall beds too. And here's why. My dogs love tomatoes, and they keep eating our tomatoes. So I think this bed is tall enough that they can't get into them. Now, my tomatoes are gonna get really tall in here, and indeterminate tomatoes, it's gonna be crazy tall. So I'm gonna have to do some work to accommodate that, but I'm not too worried about it. We'll just put a trellis up, and I'm gonna grow things. Well, we'll see how it all goes together. Right now, I haven't finished filling the bed yet, and as soon as it's full, then I'll be able to plant things out. So I get this question frequently about my metal raised beds and also about our stock tank pool. And the answer actually is the same. The question is always, does the metal get hot? It doesn't. And here's why. With a stock tank pool and with a metal raised bed, the water inside or the soil inside is never going to be as hot as the air temperature. And so it's always going to keep the metal cooler. So you don't have to worry about it being too hot. It really doesn't get hot. It just is a container, and the soil temperature is never going to be 100 degrees. Never. I've never burned myself on metal beds. It's all good. So you don't have to worry about that. If you stick around too, I have some tips for assembling these beds. After putting together 18 of them, I know what I'm doing, and I have some things that will help you put them together faster and more efficiently. So for the potager garden, I chose to use the urban line from Birdies Beds, and these are made out of Corten steel. And in a few minutes, I'm going to show you how to hasten that patina. We didn't do that for most of these beds. There are a few of them that I treated to see how quickly I could get them to develop the patina, and it's really fast. But the rest I just let go over the winter, and they look beautiful too. I love the way that looks, and that patina is actually a protective patina for the Birdies beds. It keeps the Corten from rusting. One tip, if you're going to use that urban line, you want to put them on a bed of gravel, not directly on the soil. And here we actually have like a foot of gravel underneath them, and that's a whole other story. But putting them on gravel means that the water drains away and it will reduce any corrosion issues that might occur, and you'll have a longer life for your raised beds. I really love the way these beds cleaned up this front area. It makes it so much nicer out here, and it's just a better look overall. I cannot wait until there are plants just spilling over the edges and trailing down to the ground. It's going to be glorious by the end of the summer. I have links below for all kinds of materials, including a discount code for Birdies beds as well. So let's talk about how to weather Corten steel. This process will work for anything made out of Corten steel, not just these planters. And just know you can leave the steel exposed to the elements and it will develop that patina over about 6 months or so. But if you want to hurry it along, you'll just need some basic supplies. Safety glasses, gloves, a spray bottle, a half teaspoon of salt, 2 ounces of white vinegar, and 16 ounces of hydrogen peroxide. You put the salt, vinegar, and hydrogen peroxide in the spray bottle and then shake it really, really well. Then place your steel product on some plastic sheeting. Spray down the steel with the mixture and then just wait. Over the course of a few hours, that patina just blooms. And repeat as desired. You'll spray it, rinse it, repeat over and over again until you have the patina you want. It's gorgeous and super easy. Okay, so I promised you 5 tips for assembling your Birdies raised beds. I've assembled 18 of them, and they're not hard at all, but there are a couple things that make it even easier. Tip number 1, work in small sections. Put 2 panels together at a time, 2 panels and 2 panels, and then connect those sections together. It's so much easier that way. Tip number 2, get some basic tools. You need a driver or a drill or a power screwdriver with a Phillips head bit. Also, clamps are a huge help, and you'll want to use the tool that's included to hold the nut or get a pair of vice grips. Either way, when you're putting in the bolt, having something that holds the nut will make that connection so much tighter and easier. Tip number 3, work in a flat area. Set up a really good work surface and work on a table or on a patio or on the floor somewhere. Don't try to put it together in place. Then just walk it over. But working flat makes it so much easier than trying to work vertically. Tip number 4, use a level and get it level. It will look so much better in the end if everything is level, especially if you're installing more than one bed. Make sure that the tops are level, and then everything will look better in the end. Number 5, get a friend. I have put them together alone. I've put them together with help. It's a lot easier when you have help. You can do it by yourself, but I recommend just getting a friend. It makes the whole thing simpler. If you have any questions, drop them below and I will be sure to answer them. And don't forget to like and subscribe. Happy gardening.